Okay, so the Eagles' bye week is now over, and the Eagles' toughest stretch of games starts this week with the Kansas City Chiefs, and ahead of the matchup, Brandon Graham has a message for Travis Kelce. Meanwhile, the Eagles' secondary is expected to get some additional help for this game, which is desperately needed. Speaking of which, according to reports, Howie Roseman almost pulled the trigger on a blockbuster trade for Patrick Surtain back at the deadline, but the 49ers had something to say about it, and that rivalry continues to heat up. Plus, the Cowboys' hype train is back, even if it's not warranted, and they're still crying about their loss to the Eagles. So we're going to talk about all that and more news in this video today, so let's not waste any time and get straight into it. So over the weekend, we saw a couple of Philly dogs enjoying their bye week, with Nolan Smith traveling back to Athens for the Georgia game, and he made an appearance on ESPN's College Game Day, and then was seen on the sideline at the game hyping up some of the Georgia guys along with fellow former Bulldog and Eagles teammate Jordan Davis. So it's definitely cool to see the Philly dogs back where they really made a name for themselves. But overall, it was just good for the entire Eagles team to get some rest and be able to recover after their hot 8-1 start, which regardless of the outcome of any of the games this week would still be good enough for the best record in the NFL. Now, there was a lot of exciting action on Sunday, and for the Eagles fans, a good amount of attention was surely on Dallas as they routed the Giants by a score of 49-17, which, don't get me wrong, is a nice win for the boys to bounce back from their loss to the Eagles. They did have an amazing day on the offensive side of the football, and it is important that they were able to take care of business against a bad team, but that's a very important detail. The Giants are a really bad football team right now, but you know how Cowboys fans are. They're right back to hyping up the Cowboys, acting like they're the best team in the NFC, and Dak Prescott is being praised like he's an actual MVP candidate by some, with ML Football putting out this tweet, which, don't get me wrong, those are some very nice stats, but this Giants team is just horrible. I mean, before making claims like this, we gotta see Dak and this Cowboys team actually beat a decent opponent, but that's not how Cowboys fans work, because as this Twitter user put it, quote, Cowboys beat a 2-7 team, now they're talking about them playing high-level football. LMAO, please, this is why we hate y'all. Very true. This is why Cowboys fans are universally hated, although I do gotta give credit where it's deserved, because usually one of the most obnoxious Cowboys fans out there in the media, aka Skip Bayless, actually had a pretty good take on the game yesterday.
Look, was I happy with 49? Sure, I was happy with 49-10, but it was the Giants. It was Tommy DeVito playing smaller than Danny DeVito. Was I satisfied with all my Cowboys yucking it up to the fourth quarter on the side? No, I was not satisfied. Do I think that Dak should be elevated in the MVP race? I do not think that. Not after 42-10 at San Francisco. Not after the fourth quarter last week at Philadelphia when I needed him to make one play. The one play he couldn't make and usually doesn't make in the biggest of games. I need to see him play to this level against Philadelphia, December 10th, and then at Buffalo, and then at Miami, and then at Washington. I need to see this team play at the level they played today in a game that really matters.
That actually made sense.
Yes, it made sense.
Okay, Skip, that's a good take. But what's not a good take is what Micah Parsons had to say before the Giants game, as on his show that he hosts on Bleacher Report, he revisited the Cowboys' loss to the Eagles, and instead of taking full accountability, he instead decided to place some blame on the officiating. Listen here.
I just think the refs, if you're going to make calls, you got to make calls everywhere, not pick and choose when to make calls. And there were some obvious and blatant, like terrible holding calls that I felt like should have been called.
Come on, Micah, you know you're better than that. I mean, surely you understand that no matter what game it is, the refs will inevitably miss a couple calls, and sure, there was an example or two of Micah being held up and it not being called, but let's not act like it didn't go both ways. Plus, it's not like the refs were heavily in the Eagles' favor, with Howie Roseman got on Twitter highlighting, quote, the Eagles had the same amount of flags as the Cowboys and also had more yards lost from flags than the Cowboys. The Cowboys keep making excuses, and that's exactly what it is, excuses. I mean, what Micah should have done is just learn from Eagles cornerback James Bradberry, who obviously in the Super Bowl was called for that ticky-tack controversial holding penalty that ended up ultimately ending the Eagles' chances to become Super Bowl champions, and yet he didn't place blame. He instead took full accountability and admitted the holding even if it was barely anything, and I think that also earned JB a lot of respect from Eagles fans, but that was after he had a season where he was among the elite cornerbacks in the game and he earned an All-Pro selection. Fast forward to this year, and fans have the right to be a little less forgiving of Bradberry, as he seems to have completely fallen off a cliff, with Eagles reporter Ruben Frank highlighting that in a recent article, as he said, quote, last year among 68 cornerbacks targeted at least 3 times per game, Bradberry had a defensive passer rating of 51.6, second best in the NFL behind Woolen of the Seahawks. Bradberry allowed completions on just 45.3% of targets, best in the NFL, and allowed just 4.4 yards per target, also best in the NFL. Pro Football Focus gave him an 80 coverage grade, which ranked 10th of 118 corners who played at least 200 coverage snaps. Let's compare all those numbers to this year so far. Defensive passer rating has gone from second best at 51.6 to 62nd best at 117.6 out of 71 corners targeted 3 times per game. Completion percentage has increased from 45.3 to 57.4, yards per target skyrocketed from 4.4 to 6.7, and PFF's season coverage grade has plunged from 80 to 53.9, so he's gone from 10th out of 118 corners to 101st out of 114 corners. Now I know that was a lot to digest, but essentially what we've seen from Bradberry is him going from one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL last year to one of the worst in just one season. And there could be a lot of different factors that explain this. I mean, the Eagles have faced better QBs this year than they did last year, and Bradberry has been shaken up with injuries at times, plus he was moving back and forth between the inside and outside earlier this season, not to mention all the moving parts on the Eagles defense with injuries and new additions and a new system with first-year defensive coordinator Sean Desai. But whatever it is, Bradberry better figure it out and bounce back in the second half of the season. And that honestly goes for the entire secondary, as they've really struggled all year, sitting as the 28th ranked pass defense in the league, and going into a game where the Birds will face Patrick Mahomes, they really need to figure things out. Now it sounds like over the bye, the Eagles did a lot of self-scouting, including on the secondary, so maybe they'll have ironed some of their issues out and made necessary adjustments. Plus, it'll really help to have Roby back, who, in a small sample size this year for the Birds, has been really good in the slot, which is definitely an area the Eagles have struggled in the past few weeks. So hopefully the bye and the return of Roby is just the help the Eagles defense needed. Although, I must admit, it definitely would have been nice to have arguably the best cornerback in the NFL on the roster to help fix things, and it apparently almost happened, so we're going to talk about that and more in just a minute here. But real quick, I have to say, if you are enjoying this video or you're finding it informative in any way, make sure you go down right now, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any more videos just like this. Around 75% of the people that do watch these videos aren't subscribed. Again, if you're one of those people and you don't want to miss another video coming in the future, make sure you fix that right now. I think that's a win-win for the both of us. Now with that being said, let's get back into the video. So apparently, according to reports, the Eagles and Howie Roseman were making a push to try and get Patrick Surtain from the Broncos at the trade deadline, as Mike Florio of Pro Football Talk reported that both the Eagles and 49ers were calling the Broncos in hopes to possibly trade for Surtain at the deadline. Now, this is kind of crazy. I mean, we did hear rumblings of this leading into the deadline, with the Broncos reportedly open to blowing everything up, and the prospect of adding Surtain to the Eagles secondary was definitely fascinating, because not only do you get what A.J. Brown calls the best cornerback in the NFL right now, but you also get a young player that still has the ability to get better and better as the years go on. He immediately would have made a huge impact on this Eagles defense, he clearly would have made the pass defense much better, and he also would have definitely become a pillar for this Eagles defense and someone that would stick around for a very long time. However, when discussing the prospect of this trade at the deadline, I personally wasn't all in on it because of the Broncos' very high asking price of what was reportedly around multiple first-round picks and other draft capital, which I thought was just too much for the Eagles to give up, especially because of what Howie Roseman has been able to do in the draft the past couple years. And ultimately, the Broncos' high asking price is what led to Patrick Surtain remaining in Denver, as neither the Eagles or the 49ers were willing to meet it, and it's a very real possibility that the asking price kept being driven up by the other team, as it was also reported that both teams were concerned that the other would end up with Surtain, which tells me one thing, and it's really nothing new, but the Eagles and 49ers probably both see each other as their biggest threat to getting out of the NFC, so this rivalry, which really got started last year in the NFC Championship game, is only continuing to heat up, and their meeting on December 3rd in just a couple weeks is going to be a must-see matchup. I mean, I really can't wait. But first, the focus has to be on another must-see matchup that is coming up on Monday with the Kansas City Chiefs, where, like I said, that Eagles secondary with no Pat Surtain must be better, and overall, the Eagles defense just needs to find a way to slow down easily the Chiefs' biggest pass-catching weapon in Travis Kelce, and Brandon Graham seems to have a plan to do that.
There's a lot to say right now. You gonna do a little trash talking in that game?
Oh, you definitely know it. You know, you know he gave a lot of ammo with all the stuff that he's doing out there, just to have some fun with him, because I know ever since Taylor Swift and him got together, boy, his life has taken off even more, and probably brought more fans than he knows. So I'm just gonna enjoy just, you know, badgering with him, having a little fun.
Now look, we know BG is gonna talk trash to just about anybody.
He's running right at you now, sir. You look like you tired from this week. Tell BG, stop dancing on the I'm playing, all right? I know, I did. I say, we f***ing running that show ass today. You're not even
it'll surely be hilarious to hear him going at Kelce, trying to get in his head by using his relationship with Taylor Swift against him. I mean, I really hope that they mic BG up for this game, because it'd be so funny to hear that, and hopefully he's able to somehow get in Kelce's head, and that affects his game. Although I must admit, that's definitely wishful thinking. But speaking of the Kelces, a while back, Jason Kelce admitted that the Eagles' run game isn't exactly where they want it to be right now.
It hasn't been good, yeah. I think it's close. The run game's hard, and it's hard for a number of reasons. But a big reason why it's hard is to have a successful run play, everybody needs to get their job done, and everybody needs to execute their block. In my opinion, we've been very close, but it's been one of those things where it's, this year, maybe the defense gets us on one, but then, this guy doesn't get his hat inside over here. This guy gets beat there. We don't hit it quite the way we want to here. It's been a kind of a little bit of all that. And I don't think it's any one person or group in particular. I think it's just, that's the way the run game is sometimes. It's something that we're definitely focusing on, and we're trying to make sure that we are all getting in sync and doing a better job.
So hopefully Kelce and the Birds can improve those little things that Jason talked about there, and overall improve the effectiveness of the run game moving forward. Because it's no secret that the Eagles offense is most effective when both the pass game and the run game is firing on all cylinders, and since probably week 3, the run offense just hasn't been as dominant as it was earlier in the year. Now interestingly enough, that correlates almost perfectly to when right guard Cam Jurgens went out with his injury in the middle of their week 4 matchup with the Commanders. Now Cam is expected to return this week, so hopefully that gives a much needed boost to the Birds' run game, and they can get back on track starting this week versus the Chiefs, and they can use that to try and control the clock and keep the ball out of Patrick Mahomes' hands. And knocking off Mahomes and the Chiefs in Arrowhead on a Monday night would surely be a huge statement win by the Eagles. And it would also be the perfect start to what everyone is calling the gauntlet of the Eagles' schedule. Luckily, we got a QB who it seems like all he does is win, so hopefully he can help navigate the Birds through this tough stretch, and if they win 3 or 4 out of these 5 games, they're going to be in a really good spot to get the #1 seed for the 2nd straight season. But again, that all starts this week with KC. So again, if you don't want to miss any more coverage leading into that matchup, make sure you go down right now, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Also, drop a like on this video if you did enjoy it and want to show some support, and leave a comment down below just regarding anything I talked about in this video. And if you want to watch another video talking about how Brian Dawkins called out the Eagles defense and other news from last week, you can go check this out right here. Now, with all that being said, that's pretty much all I got for this one, guys. So thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.